This is the Content Marketing Podcast, episode number 125, The Content Marketer's Guide to Overcoming Procrastination. Hello and welcome to the Content Marketing Podcast. This is the show where we help you attract and retain business through the power of quality content. I'm your host, Rachel Parker of Resonance Content Marketing, and today is June 4th, 2015. Hello, and thank you for joining us today for episode number 125 of the Content Marketing Podcast. Just a reminder, we're live on iTunes and also on Stitcher, so if you're listening to this episode on the blog, you can click on over and subscribe. That'll give you new episodes automatically delivered to your listening device of choice. And if you use a different app for your podcast listening pleasure, we also have an RSS feed, and I will provide that link in the blog post. Excuse me, a little frog in my throat there. Okay, we are starting a new month, and the month of June is going to be all about time management here at Resonance, and I'll tell you why here in just a bit. This will culminate in our next VIP webinar coming up on June 24th. That will be the Content Marketer's Guide to Time Management. Now, it's not quite set up for registration just yet, so just save the date and stay tuned for details. Last week, we wrapped up our series on working with subject matter experts, also known as SMEs, by talking about how to keep those SME relationships going after a particular piece of content has published. So if you happen to miss that episode, feel free to click on over to iTunes or to Stitcher or to the RSS feed and get all caught up. This week, we are kicking on, as I said, we're kicking off our month-long focus on time management by talking about how we content marketers can overcome procrastination. But first, it's time to check in with our news feed for this week's rundown of news you can use. Kicking off today's news feed with an exciting new development over at Twitter. Twitter has announced a new tool to help advertisers better understand their key audiences. So they are providing insights about your followers and the people who have engaged with your organic tweets, not just your promoted tweets or your advertising, but your actual organic tweets. And this is a new feature called Audience Insights. So to access it, you're going to go to your Twitter homepage, click on your profile picture, and then select you go through Twitter ads. So you go there, and then one of the tabs will be analytics, and then one of the options under there will be audience insights, and that's how you can get to yours. The categories include interests, gender, household income, occupation, net worth, and many other criteria. And you can look at the analytics for Twitter overall, for the overall audience of Twitter, however many million users they have, or just your followers. And, I was looking at mine today, and it was pretty much what I expected, but there were some surprises in there. For example, the top interests of people who follow me are things like marketing and entrepreneurship and things like that. No surprise there. I was surprised to find out how very skewed my audience was gender-wise towards the male side. Like 75% of my followers are male, so I don't know if it's because I tweet about football or what, but anyway, I found some very interesting insights there. So as I said, to get to your insights, go to Twitter ads, then click the Analytics tab. That's going to be near the top of the screen, and one of the options listed there will be Audience Insights. So you can go there right now to check out your Audience Insights. Google has introduced a new feature on Google+, and yes, Google+ is still alive and well, so you don't get out of it just yet. Basically, they are making an effort to compete with sites like Instagram and Pinterest, and so they have set up Google Photos as its own separate section. So when you upload a photo or a video, instead of getting mixed in with everything else on your Google Plus feed, you can upload it directly to Google Photos and have everything in one place. It is there for both personal pages and company pages. It is live right now as we speak. And like I said, it's a standalone site for photos and videos. And this is going to be really handy if visuals are an important part of your content marketing. And I recommend that you embrace the power of visuals. And it puts it all in one place. For example, you may have noticed that I publish a weekly video tip. So under my Google Photos tab, all of those video tips will be found in one place, as well as any infographics I've shared and any other visuals. So it's pretty handy. And it looks like it has, when they set it up, it automatically pulls in photos and videos that you upload to Google Plus. So it's not like you have to upload to Google Plus and then click over to Google Photos. It will automatically pull in those photos and videos to have them all in one place. To check it out, go to your Google Plus page and hover over the left navigation, and you will see the Photos link in there. So you'll be able to see what your Google Photos section looks like. Okay, one more piece of news, again out of Twitter. Twitter has released Periscope on Android. So Android users, your wait is over. Twitter has released a version of its live video app Periscope just for you. And Periscope, I've got to say, is getting a lot of buzz. It was introduced, I want to say maybe a couple of months ago, but I continue to see a lot of blog posts about it, a lot of chatter about it. And people are really jumping on the bandwagon. So Android users, this is a perfect time for you to be able to access Periscope and get in on the game. Now, you do need to be running 4.4 KitKat or higher on your Android phone, and you can go ahead and pick that app up in the Google Play Store and start using Periscope for your live video streams. Okay, this week's content hit of the week is a post called 5 Tips to Create an Irresistible Call to Action. And this was written by Vaibhav Kakar. Vaibhav, I hope I'm not butchering your name too terribly. And this was published on Jeff Bullis's blog. And the reason I picked this post is that we've talked about several times on this podcast and elsewhere about the need for a strong call to action. You've captured that audience member's attention. You've held their attention all the way through the blog post, all the way through the podcast or whatever it is. And you need to leave them a call to action to give them that next logical step, whether it's downloading an ebook, registering for a webinar, signing up for a free consultation, etc. And so we know we need to have them, but how do we word them? And what are some of the best practices around those calls to action? So in this post, Vaibhav, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, shares 5 handy tips for creating a solid call to action. Plus, he takes a look at several companies that have really nailed their calls to action. They've really been very creative, but still, still mindful of what works in terms of getting those clicks. Anyway, it's a very interesting read, and I will provide the link in the blog post for this episode. Okay, that's it for this week's update. If you stumble across something you think might be of interest to your fellow content marketers, please shoot it on over to us so that we can share, and I will provide that contact info at the end of the podcast. Now it's time for this week's Spotlight segment, the Content Marketer's Guide to Overcoming Procrastination. Today we are kicking off a month-long series devoted to time management for the content marketer. And the reason behind this month-long focus is it was inspired by conversations that I frequently have when I am out and about talking to fellow marketers. And when I pose them the question, what's the biggest challenge when it comes to your content marketing? Inevitably, number one on their list is I just don't have enough time to do everything that is on my plate. So, the bad news is we all have the same 24 hours. If you figured out a way to crowbar in an extra hour or two, please do let me know. Would love to hear your secret. But the good news is we can really optimize our use of that time to get everything done on our to-do list without completely exhausting ourselves. So that is what I aim to all month long. I'm going to be providing you with strategies to make the most of the time you have available. Now, content marketers, yes, we are busy. We have got content to develop. We've got content to strategize. We have to, be engaging with those thought leaders. We have to be monitoring. I mean, we have a very, very full plate. And I can understand the frustration just in terms of what's been dumped on us. However, I want to turn this around a little bit and talk about ways that we sabotage ourselves sometime. And one of those self-sabotages is procrastination. So yeah, you're getting a little dose of tough love here today, but stick with me. I've got some good stuff to share. So what is it? Now, you all know I am a graduate of Catholic grammar school, and it was pounded into my head in that 8th grade composition class to define your terms. So even though we all know what procrastination is, let me reiterate. It's the practice of carrying out less urgent tasks in preference to more urgent ones, or more pleasurable tasks instead of less pleasurable ones. One definition I read was procrastination is the opposite of productivity, which I thought was a very interesting twist on it. So what's the big deal about procrastination? Well, number one, it's bad in a business sense. It takes very critical tasks and pushes them until the very last minute when we have to rush and get them done. And we probably do not get them done as well as we would have if we had started them when we had intended to start them. It's like working on that term paper in college when you found yourself just burning the midnight oil and just smacking yourself on the forehead going, why didn't I start this earlier? So, it's not, and of course it gets all our project timelines crunched if there are other people waiting on us for this thing we're procrastinating, then we become the bottleneck. So it's bad, it's bad in the team sense as well. But also, I've discovered that procrastination is also bad for your health. A recent study at Bishop's University found a correlation between habitual procrastination and, number 1, hypertension, and number 2, even heart disease. And, the way I see procrastination, it's like a double whammy. So if there's something that we just don't want to do, every time the thought pops up in your head, wow, I really have to do this, it's like a mini stress bomb. It's something that comes up that we've assigned ourselves that we're avoiding. And then on the back end, after we have procrastinated this thing, then we feel guilt, which is more stress on the brain and, apparently eventually on the body. So, and I do want to point out one thing, that procrastination occasionally can be a positive thing. There might be a situation where we need to do more research, we need to give more careful consideration to possible outcomes, maybe we need to get some more input from more stakeholders. I'm sure you've had the situation where you might have been procrastinating making a decision, and then while you were procrastinating, something came along that you did not know about prior, but in essence, it turned out to be good that you procrastinated because, you had that thing happen. So, occasionally there is good procrastination, but that's not what I'm talking about. And I think you know the difference between good procrastination or potentially good procrastination and bad procrastination. So, okay, we've agreed that it's not a healthy practice, either business-wise or personally. So what can we do about it? And I've got 5 tips that I want to share with you today. The first step is to recognize it, to recognize that we are procrastinating something. And, this really became ridiculously clear to me recently. I've had some phone calls that I have had on my schedule for the last week. These are not scary sales calls. They're just, kind of connection calls to people to reconnect. And I use the program Asana to track my project management, and I've had them on my Asana list, and I keep pushing them, I keep rescheduling and rescheduling. Well, Asana keeps track of every time you change the date on a task. So every time I see them, not only do I feel the stress of, I've been putting these off for ages, but Asana shows me bit by bit, change by change every time I have procrastinated this task. So awareness is the first step to recovery, right? So the first step in dealing with procrastination is recognizing that we do it. But it's also recognizing that the thing we're procrastinating is something that is important, that needs to be done. And it could be that when you ask yourself that question, it's not really something that needs to be done. For example, I work with a business coach, and I had set myself a task to apply for to be certified as a woman-owned business. It was on my to-do list, and it was, we have our calls every other week. Every call, it was there. Have you done it yet? No. Have you done it yet? No. And finally, she asked me, is this really something that you feel you need right now? And I thought about it a bit, and I was like, no, I think that's why I'm procrastinating it, because I don't see a huge benefit to getting this done. She said, well, just, take it off the list. And I took it off the list and reduced my stress level, and everything was fine because it wasn't something that was really urgent. So we need to be aware of what's going on, recognize that we're procrastinating, and recognize the thing we're procrastinating is something that actually needs to get done. The second step is consider why we're procrastinating. I've heard that procrastination is fear in 5 syllables. So, and I can definitely see that. There's usually some kind of fear behind the reason that we are procrastinating. I think these reasons I've been putting these calls off is I just don't like the phone. Folks, I just don't. I'm not a phone person. I'm not one to call friends and just chat. I'm just not a fan. So, that's my bugaboo that's been keeping me preventing me from making these calls. But really look at, just when you catch yourself procrastinating something, take a minute to stop and consider why. I know for me, I tend to procrastinate on projects when it's something that I'm tackling for the first time. So for example, you might be working on an ebook for your brand, for your company, and you may have never done one before. So there's that trepidation of, am I doing this right? Is there something I'm missing? Yes, I've read all the blog posts and read all the ebooks about writing ebooks, but, I'm just not sure I'm doing it right for me and my brand and my team. And that can be a source of fear. We're afraid of doing it wrong, or afraid of going down the wrong path and having to back up and retrace our steps and do it over sometime again in the future. You may be procrastinating reaching out to a thought leader for maybe an interview or some insights. That could be fear of rejection. It could be the person saying, oh, you're ridiculous, no, go away, or just completely ignoring you. So there could be a lot of reasons behind why we procrastinate. I mean, it could be it's just a really hairy, sticky task that's very tedious. I think that's why a lot of us procrastinate on our taxes, because yes, it does involve money and how much the government is going to get, but it is a tedious process. Even if you're working with a CPA, it's a tedious process to get all that stuff together. So once you recognize the reason, the good news is once you recognize that reason, it's almost like putting the genie back in the bottle. It's like, okay, here's the reason. Let's deal with the reason. Okay, why don't I want to pick up the phone? What am I, what is my fear? What is my trepidation? And then when we can deal with that, then we can look at that procrastination in a new light and maybe see about moving forward. The third tip that I have for you is to put systems in place to counter your tendency to procrastinate. And there are a lot of tricks that you can use. If you Google tips for overcoming procrastination, you will see a sea of wonderful ideas. And I've got just a few here. Number one, so this is the first this type of system you might want to think of is a reward/punishment system. So, make a deal with yourself. Say, okay, if I finish writing this blog post by 2:00, I'm going to march down to Starbucks and get myself the most syrupy mocha frappuccino latte with whipped cream that they can possibly make, and I'm going to sit and drink it and enjoy every second of it. Or you could consider the converse and have a punishment in there somewhere. A couple of years ago, I heard about this very innovative alarm clock, and it was connected to the internet. And every time you hit the snooze button, it would make like a 25-cent donation to the opposite political party of the one that you support. So that was an example of using the punishment, avoiding punishment tendency to help people get themselves out of bed. So maybe it's, I don't know, give $2 to a cause you don't like if you don't finish that blog post by 2:00 or something like that. Or maybe $1 for every hour you procrastinate or something like that. So you can actually have some fun with these punishment reward systems. Another system you can think about is accountability. Accountability is wonderful. And all it involves is just tell one of your colleagues the parameters you set for yourself. Say, hey, I have sworn that I'm going to get this blog post written by 2:00 today. Would you mind checking on me at some point? Check on me at maybe 12:30, 1:00, see how I'm doing. And the way your brain functions, it's like, when you just have yourself in that accountability function, I mean, you can lie to yourself all day long. I know, because I could lie to myself all day long. But when another person is involved, it kind of ramps things up a notch. And you think, wow, so-and-so is going to check on me. I better have some progress made so that I can respond when they pop into my cubicle. Just an idea, set up you can even have accountability buddies. You can check on each other to prevent each of you from procrastinating. And then another system, and I have used this many times and it really works, do it first. If you are procrastinating something, set aside a morning when, as soon as you sit down at your desk, get to that task and get it done. There was a business book written a few years ago called Eat That Frog. And the idea was that, if you have to eat a frog, like there's no getting out of it, you have to eat a frog. Would you rather, is it better to do it now or later? It's better to do it now, of course. And I have done that. I've just blocked out that time, blocked out all distractions, and sworn to myself, I'm going to sit here until this is done. The goal is to get it done by 10:30, and then I can have it off my plate, off my brain, and I can, relax and enjoy the rest of my day. Tip number 4 that I have for you is kind of a self-talk tip. Let go of using the words "I have to." Because, when we procrastinate, we think, oh, I have to, but I can't right now. I have to, but I don't want to, so I'm going to push it off. I have to. And it's a very disempowering phrase. When you have to, that means you don't really have any choice. You don't have any freedom. It's something that's pressing down on you. So you can experiment with swapping out "I have to" and getting back to "I have to." When we tell ourselves "I have to," that little rebellious 5-year-old comes out, and we start mentally, if not physically, throwing ourselves on the floor and throwing fists and ankles and just throwing the biggest temper tantrum. So what we can do is an experiment with this. See how it fits. Change "I have to" either "I will" or "I choose to." And if you really want to go gung-ho, my personal favorite is changing "I have to" "I get to." And that's something that I use, with work situations, with personal situations. Instead of saying, to use a commonplace situation, instead of saying "I have to go to the gym," I get to go to the gym. I have a healthy body that I can exercise. I have a gym nearby that I can go to. I have a fantastic trainer that I'm blessed to work with. And it really changes your attitude. And that, that rebellious 5-year-old is usually okay with that. So experiment with what you can say instead of "I have to" when you talk to yourself about this thing that you're procrastinating. And then finally, tip number 5 is to break big tasks into small ones. Sometimes we procrastinate because the task we are looking at is just so huge. It's so huge we don't even want to think about how long it's going to take. So, what we can do is break those big tasks up into smaller ones. And those small tasks are a lot easier for our brains to digest. So, For example, if you've been tasked with putting together an infographic, you can break that up into number 1, doing the research, number 2, writing the content, number 3, send it to the graphic designer and work with her on the layout, number 4, submitting it for approval and getting sign-off from the powers that be, and then number 5, publishing. And once you break it up into those 5 smaller steps, it's not that big monolithic boogeyman anymore. It's bite-sized, it's manageable, and it's a lot less likely to generate the freak out that leads us to procrastination. So those are my 5 tips for overcoming procrastination for content marketers. If you have any questions or would like to add to the conversation, I'd love to hear from you, and I will give that contact info at the end of the podcast. Now it's time for our content marketing tip of the week. For today's tip, I want to talk about watching yourself. No, I'm not talking about staring at yourself in the mirror all day, but rather observe how your mind and your body feel as you go throughout the day. Some of us are morning people, some of us are night owls, some of us really, early evening might be that time when we come alive. So figure out what your peak time is and what your low times are. Figure out those times when you are most energetic and most creative, and schedule your most important content activities during those times. So, for example, many of us are not morning people. I happen to be one. I'm the one that everyone wants to shoot because I'm all nice and perky first thing in the morning, but many of us are not. So if you are in fact not a morning person, you might want to reserve that first hour for things like checking your analytics, following up with your subject matter experts, things like that. Then once your energy picks up, maybe late morning is that time when you really come alive. That's the time you want to use for your most creative activities, for writing those blog posts, for working on that email content, working on that ebook, etc., etc. And by organizing your day around your energy level, you will not only be more productive, but your results will be better, and you might even find yourself a little bit happier. Okay, campers, that is it for me today. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Content Marketing Podcast. If you like what you've heard today, please feel free to subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher or via our RSS feed. And if you really like what you've heard, please leave us a quick review on iTunes. I would so appreciate that. For more information about content marketing, you're welcome to visit our website at resonancecontent.com, where you'll also find links to our pages on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and other social networks. I also invite you to check out our monthly webinar series on the 4th Wednesday of every month. I know the next one is coming up. I believe June 24th is the date. We're not quite set up for registration yet, but do save the date and we will let you know as soon as it is scheduled. As always, I like to leave you with a quote, and today's comes from William Penn. He once said, quote, "Time is what we want most, but what we use worst," unquote. Again, this is Rachel Parker with Resonance Content Marketing. Thank you again for listening, and we will see you again next week. Take care.